As the old saying goes, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And a lot... Ow! Well, it looks like talking with my hands is not going to work, so let us instead check out the stadiums and arenas of Roma, Italia. Stadio Flaminio. Unlike a lot of Rome's most famous buildings, there is no ornate facade here, but the exact opposite, just exposed concrete all round. Having said that, there is still a little bit of an Italian flair here and there. It was built on the site of what was Italy's national stadium back in the day. Currently, it's the largest stadium in the city that doesn't have a running track around the field. So it's the second largest stadium in the city. However, it's not home to Rome's biggest football club or even the second. Instead, it's home to various smaller teams of the football and rugby variety. Or I should say it was home to them, because sadly, as of 2024, the stadium is occupied only by vandals. And I'm not talking about the vandals that invaded Rome back in the day, rather the ones that like to create a depiction of a giant penis with spray paint. I believe there are plans to renovate this stadium though. We'll have to wait and see. Palazo Dello Sport, also known as Pala Lotomatica. This one features a wraparound glazed facade and a big concrete roof with a skylight in the middle. Come to think of it, the roof is akin to the Pantheon in Rome. Here it is. So yeah, that's pretty cool. There have been a couple of American sports venues we've seen that have paid homage to that building. So I guess it's fitting that Rome has one too. This place was for several decades home of Virtus Roma, the biggest basketball club in the city. But presumably they weren't making the most of the large capacity, as they moved to a smaller venue in 2020. One with a confusingly similar name. Well, go on then. It's called Palazo Delo Sport. I know what you're thinking, why would they move in here when there's clearly been an atomic bomb dropped on the building? Well, yes, that may be true, but thankfully this beautiful building has since been renovated. Reopening last year. It's looking good. And the radiation levels have lowered to levels that are safe for most humans anyway. It might not have a skylight, but the ceiling is very distinctive. And it's still bright and airy in here owing to the windows lower down. It may not be as technologically impressive, but it certainly makes for a more cozy and intimate home than their previous venue. It's got to be a cheaper rent as well. Stadio Tre Fontane.
Three fountains.
I always like to have a crack at guessing what non-English names mean in English. My educated guess for this would be Three Fountains Stadium? The street that it backs onto and the area as a whole both bear the Tre Fontane name. When I spend half the time talking about the name, that is a telltale sign that the stadium is kinda lame. Well, not lame, just a little lackluster. I said lame because it rhymes with name, you see. There are plans to expand the stadium in the future. Perhaps they'll add a bit of roof coverage in the process, because there's none at the moment. Stadio Olympico. As the name suggests, this stadium hosts the Olympic Games. Although, come to think of it, there are almost certainly more stadiums with Olympic in the title that have never hosted the Olympics than ones that have. Anyway, it hosted the event in 1960. Although it wasn't built specifically for the Games. In fact, they started building it in 1928. Sport was held in the unfinished stadium in the early 30s. However, it wasn't fully completed until well after World War II. It was then partially rebuilt prior to the Olympics, and again this wraparound roof just prior to hosting games at the 1990 Football World Cup. So yeah, it certainly hosted its fair share of big events, and then some. The ground also happens to host the two biggest football clubs in the city, so it's still going strong. One old school feature that I kinda like is that despite the large capacity, there is just one tier of seating all round, basically, which makes for an uninterrupted wall of fans. But that design does have its downsides as well. Part of the same complex called Foro Italico is Stadio Olimpico del Nuoto, the swimming venue used at the Olympics. It's looking nice and wet. Oh, no it's not. It's empty. That's better. Seems like they put temporary seating up during big events. As well as the tennis complex that hosts the Italian Open. It of course hosted the tennis at the aforementioned Olympics, although a lot of the buildings, including Stadio Centrale, were rebuilt prior to the 2010 Italian Open. It too is without a roof of any kind, but what I do like is how steep the seating bowl is. It has the potential to make even a tennis crowd seem intimidating. At least until the chair umpire says, "Quiet please."
Quiet please. Quiet please. Will you shut the fuck up? I've said quiet please, that's when you're supposed to stop making sounds. Fuck. I'm so fired. First service.
Stadio dei Marmi. This place opened alongside Stadio Olimpico, both geographically and chronologically. The seating layout might be as simple as can be, but that is countered by the fact that it's surrounded by 60 statues, each of which was donated by a different Italian province. They are all different types of athletes. This guy here was donated by the province of La Spezia. He is competing in a traditional La Spezia sport called Throw the Rock at the Donkey. Thankfully it's a sport that basically no one partakes in nowadays, on account of the fact that I made it up. This place was recently renovated, as you can see here. It gained a new track and a new field, which from what I understand are two elements that are integral to track and field. The Coliseum is one of the most famous tourist attractions in the city, in the world for that matter. And I guess it is kind of a sports venue, so why not give it a mention? It has a fascinating origin story, of course, but what I find most interesting is the name. The story goes that upon seeing that there was a crumbling, decrepit-looking stadium in the US that was called the Oakland Coliseum, the Romans decided to name their equivalent venue after it. They changed up the spelling a little bit, but they didn't fool me. It no longer hosts gladiator events, as they were outlawed in 404 AD, I believe. I can just imagine some of the locals at the time complaining that the world has gone too woke.
Let me tell you, Marcus, a world in which you cannot watch a man be eaten by a lion for entertainment purposes is not a world I want to live in.
What are you talking about? My name's Darius. Marcus is dead. He was eaten by a lion yesterday.
And those were the stadiums of Rome. My favourite lot would have to be Stadio Olimpico, which is a cut above the rest in terms of size but also quality. Thanks for watching. Arrivederci Roma. Have a good one.